You're gonna love this episode if you care at all about growing perfect carrots. Let's go. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, I'm gonna show you how to grow perfect carrots every single time. These are Danvers 126 carrots and they look incredible, but you can grow any type of carrot perfectly with the help of this video. Let's go. All right, so the first tip to getting beautiful carrots every single time has everything to do with the soil. You'll notice I'm not struggling to harvest these carrots. And yes, the soil is a little bit damp. However, the soil itself is very, very loose. You see, the soil that we're growing in is basically a soil that is essentially pure compost that's been amended over time into our native soil. Our native soil is quite heavy clay, and there's no way that we could grow these beautiful carrots in very heavy clay soil because carrots are basically they're a modified root. And a modified root is essentially, this is part of the carrot's root system. This is not a tuber like, say, a potato, and it's not a bulb like an onion. This is actually just a modified root that is meant to store water so that when the carrot goes through a dry spell, it can use the water found in the carrot root itself. Because carrots are actually native to Afghanistan, believe it or not. And so they're born and bred to essentially grow in very dry, arid environments. And we've cultivated them for their, essentially for their beautiful orange roots. There's also other colored carrots as well, which you should try growing. But the soil itself is very, very loose. And that's because they could never grow in very heavy clay soil because they would be restricted and the roots would have very poor development. And in fact, the roots would often rot and just kind of wither away. But soil that is too heavy sand as well, or too much sand, will dry out too fast and you'll end up with a lot of very wiry, spindly roots. You're not gonna end up with a very thick stem like this. It's a sweet spot. And again, our soil here is absolutely beautiful. I think this is the nicest our soil has ever looked. It will hold together well, but it also will totally crumble the moment you start to move around with it. So this is wonderful, and it's very, very essential because what it does is it does hold on to enough water, but allows water to drain through the soil and encourage that taproot to move throughout the soil. And the soil is not compacted, so the roots are not gonna be hitting anything and doing any bending or stuff like that. So soil makes a huge difference to getting perfect carrots. The second thing that we do to getting beautiful carrots like this, oh my, look at this one. Look at that. Dude, look at that. That is incredible. The second thing that we do to getting beautiful carrots like this is we plant at the right time. You see, a lot of gardeners make the mistake of planting their carrots too late into the season. We actually started these about the end of May, early June. We started them early. Now see, if it's too early and it's too cold, carrot seeds won't germinate. They're gonna sit in the soil and they're gonna rot. But if it's too hot, the seeds won't germinate either. See, carrot seeds are very finicky about their germination window. And so for us, I find typically the best time to plant is either just at the very end of May to the very beginning of June. That's the best time to plant your carrots. Now, also, carrot seeds, they have very low germination rate. And so I will typically find that I have to overseed. Overseeding is very important if you want to make sure you have a nice full row of carrots like this, because carrot seeds have a much lower germination rate than, say, like tomato seeds or pepper seeds. You're lucky if you get 75 to 80% germination on carrots. Typically, it's more like 60 to 65%. So I will typically, if I'm making rows, I will sow 2 times the normal amount of seed that I would typically seed. That way I have nice, full, dense rows of carrots. And then, which we'll talk about, I come back and I thin later to get good spacing. But that way I have a nice, dense planting of carrots. So planting at the right time is very important, and also tying that into getting high quality seed. You know, because carrot seed loses germination rate super fast, they only have a viability window of about a year to 2 years at most. Because of that, you want to go with a very high quality seed source so that you have success with germination. Because that germination window is so short, if you miss it, you're going to miss out on the prime time to grow carrots. And so again, that's why I densely sow. That way I know that I have seeds in the ground at the right time. I go with fresh seed, so that way I have the best chance of the seeds germinating. And then I essentially just let them go. And I don't do anything in terms of thinning until I start to get some really well-developed carrots that I know are gonna be successful and take root there. All right, the third thing we do to getting, oh, shoot, dude. Look at that carrot. That is a Danvers carrot. They're not even supposed to get that big. That's insane. This is the biggest Danvers carrot I have ever grown in my entire life. But it just goes to show that when you follow these tips, you yourself can have amazing carrots as well, super simply. So the third thing that I do is I actually put them in darkness. Carrot seeds, because you have to plant them almost at the surface of the soil, do not germinate very well if you leave them exposed to sunlight. So what I need to do is I need to cover them up. And what I'll do is I'll place a piece of cardboard over top of the space that I'm planting my carrots. And I'll weigh them down on the corners with some rocks or some bricks or something like that so that it doesn't blow away. And I will check it periodically after about 4 to 5 days to check for carrot sprouts. The reason why I do that is because carrot seeds will germinate far better and far more successfully in the dark. And because moisture is so critical to the seed's germination, that's another thing I'm going to touch on in a second, it helps to hold the moisture near the seeds. Because if the seeds go dry, they're going to die. That's a little rhyme that an old Amish farmer taught me when he was growing carrots and he was teaching me how he grew his carrots. That's what he taught me. If the seeds go dry, they die. It's a little tongue twister, but it's super easy to remember. All right, the fourth thing we do to getting beautiful carrots is we practice what's called deep watering. Now, we did a whole episode on different watering techniques, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go check it out. But deep watering is essentially the process of letting your soil dry out periodically and then watering very, very deeply, because you have to remember, the root's job is to go seek out water. And if you're watering right at the surface, the roots don't have any incentive to go deeper throughout the soil. And so carrots, because they are a root, just like any other crop, if you water right at the surface, you're gonna end up with a lot of webby, wiry roots and not really thick, well-formed carrots. So by deep watering, what we're doing is we're encouraging that taproot to go down deeper into the soil. And because we have a looser soil, it allows the water to flow down deeper throughout the soil. We have probably about 8 to 10 inches of super loose, well-draining soil, which is critical. So by deep watering, that's going to encourage those taproots to go all the way down. Now, the next thing we do though, is we don't let the soil just turn out, get bone dry for a super long time. We time it out just so that basically when the soil is dry, about to the very end of the carrot or very bottom of the carrot, that's when we're rewatering. Because you have to remember, see, this right here is that taproot. If this carrot were left, to go forever, a lot of this carrot could continue to grow. Now, it would obviously make the top of the carrot a little tougher, a little woodier, so there's kind of a fine time when you're gonna pick your carrots, but eventually these would also get filled out, right? This is just the immature root of the carrot. This is still a carrot. And so that's the secret there, because if you let it go bone dry for too long, what'll happen is these carrots, because they're a modified root, and like I talked about, they grow in arid environments, the tops of the carrots will use up the water inside of the carrot, and you're going to end up with really soft, shriveled carrots, and they're going to be misshapen. And once that happens, they actually kind of stop growing and stop forming. So it's critical to not let them go too dry for too long, but just enough so you can deep water. All right, the fifth thing that we do to get beautiful carrots like this is we have to fertilize. Now, how we fertilize makes a huge difference on how well the carrots turn out. A lot of gardeners make the mistake of over-fertilizing. Now, over-fertilizing might not seem like a bad thing. It might just seem like, well, I'm just fertilizing more than what the plant needs. But in that is how it's a bad thing. You see, carrots, if they're over-fertilized, they will produce a lot of green growth, but not a lot of root development. And so you're gonna get smaller carrots, just a lot of roots, but absolutely incredible tops. And so you might think to yourself, my carrots are looking beautiful. And then when harvest time comes, you pull it up, and it's basically just like all top growth and nothing down below. That happens from over-fertilizing. Too much nitrogen can be the culprit of that. It also affects things like radishes, as well as beets and turnips, rutabagas, a lot of your other kind of modified root crops like that that are in the kind of the similar style of vegetable. Those will all be affected negatively by too much nitrogen. And so if your plants are beautiful, they're lush and they're green, that could mean you have a little bit too much nitrogen. So what we do is in the spring, we actually amend our soil only one time. And we actually will fertilize with about half as much fertilizer as we would give other things in the garden. If we're giving, per square footage, if we're giving, we use Trifecta Plus for our fertilizer, we'll use only about like 2 tablespoons per square foot. That's about half of what we normally would give. Normally it's about 4 tablespoons per square foot, but with carrots, we want to go about half that because we want to make sure they have some food, but not too much to where it prioritizes top growth. And you can use whatever fertilizer of choice you go with. Just remember, lighter is better. Less is more with carrots and some of your other modified root crops. All right, and the sixth and final thing we do to getting beautiful carrots does come down to thinning. You see, when you thin these carrots, it's going to allow for lots of expansion room for these carrots to get wider. If you've ever had carrots that they look like you're crossing your fingers, or they look like a pair of pants that have kind of knotted around each other, that's caused from basically the carrots being too close. You see, carrots, they are not like beets. They can expand a little bit. Beets have the ability to kind of expand because they're above the soil. They can expand and kind of mound out. Carrots, because they're below the soil, they will push into each other, and you'll end up with, we have a couple carrots we might have had a little too close together. And I'll show you what that looks like. Because if you don't thin, this is what happens. See, you get really undersized carrots. These were some spots that I should have probably came in and thinned a little bit more aggressively. But what happened is essentially, you see here, these carrots turned out beautiful, but they were pushing up against all these other little carrots. And that's a huge difference. These were from the same planting session. See, this one's pretty, that's, you know, average sized carrot. But these carrots are dramatically smaller than these carrots simply because they were from a better spaced portion of my row. I'll just go to show you. This right here is what I should have thinned a little bit more. This over here got thinned perfectly. I'll talk about the spacing in a second. But the difference, if I can find some carrots that are ready to pull, are dramatic. Here you go, check it out. This is the huge difference. Look at this, absolutely massive. So thinning makes a big difference. Here's another one, beautiful. So when it comes to thinning your carrots, how much do we thin? Well, we typically say we want about 1.5 inches to 2 inches between our plants. What we do is when we densely sow our seed, we know that we're gonna end up with lots of carrots growing, probably more than we're gonna need. But we do that because, remember, short window for planting carrots. Very, very finite window. So, because we densely seed, it does require going back and thinning. We're gonna let the carrots grow up. We're gonna let them get probably, 3 or 4 weeks old before we start to thin. And then once we thin, we're gonna pull out the carrots that we don't want, basically so we have about 1.5 inches to 2 inches spacing between our carrots. And that way, when they form, they have lots of room in between their plants so that they're not actually kind of like squishing up against each other, because that yields smaller roots themselves. And that's everything that I know about growing beautiful carrots, with a lot of help from our Amish mentors that I've learned about so much of my garden from. They also have really helped me with my carrots. So I want to thank them for really helping me get these beautiful carrots. They're such a wealth of knowledge. And if you ever have a chance to go visit some Amish or Mennonite gardening communities, definitely go do that. They're super friendly, they're super down to earth, and they'll be happy to help you kind of learn the same things that I've learned. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and send this video with someone that you think could benefit from growing more perfect, beautiful carrots. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care, everyone.